This is the first video I'm cutting this year. There's an infinite amount of stuff out from before, and you're going to see, unfortunately, we're taking a step back and that I'm working in AutoCAD 2009. I want to prove to you that that's not much different, for one thing, and also that sometimes when you run against those free installs in AutoCAD, it doesn't work out so great. So I'll probably be doing a lot of relatively number of videos in 09. We'll point out when there's differences, really not much of a difference. I've jumped ahead at this point to a point where I've done everything right because I'm at home. You'll see that my right click on my mouse is not set up because I don't have this thing set up like at school. But we remember, once we started drawing, we're going to go to Model, click there, and we want to remember the check every time. File, New, and look for that short list. You see here, mine looks about right, and I'll point out that I've mapped my home drive with a K drive to point out that I'm not lying to you, that you can actually kind of fake this out and call it the K drive here as well. So this kind of mapping of a drive at home is a reasonable thing to do. I have gone into a drawing here. Immediately remember, when you start to open up, do File, Save As, save it someplace you know where it is. I'll do this at home. Sick at home. So sick. You'll notice very often my keyboard will not work at home. So I'll slow down here. Sick at home. And also, if you can get the habit of immediately saving to an 04 drawing at the start, that's going to help out. Save where you know your stuff is at. It should be in per week, starting now. When we start in week 5. And now I want to point out there's going to be a couple other pull downs up on top here that you're going to want to hit. We're not going to necessarily be able to find them, but up here you'll want to have it to the point where you've got this bar going across the top. That's going to have the concept here of these pull downs format. And the key thing we want to remember again is we want to have these things off along the bottom except when we turn them on. We want to make sure that we're in black and not the white of paper. And eventually you'll realize you may get to a point where you tend to get rid of all your toolbars. You might click that close and you're going to be lost depending. So you want to write this one down someplace. This is one of the things you're going to want to be able to do. Minus toolbar, because that will, and then draw, and then hit a return for show. That brings back one toolbar. You can always then right-click in that hard gray space and turn back other toolbars. And so as we start going to the toolbar, when you get beyond line, offset, fillet, things like that, you'd really like to be able to deal with toolbars. I will point out that I save the ribbon. We'll be using that for a couple of things, but I save the ribbon for kind of other programs, if you would. So you can kind of claim more real estate here. And in fact, we like to have that layers toolbar up eventually so we can kind of set ourselves on the right layer. Not the most important thing to start, but learning how to use color on a page of white or color on a page of black or the model space is worthwhile. So I started with the decimals template here, and I'm going to then go now with a relatively good rule, so you don't get away from scripting once you know it, is to draft your first lines by actually typing them in with polar coordinates or rectangular coordinates. So you can either go right-click line, type L, spacebar, and then it asks for the first point. If you don't use an at, it's going to go absolutely. Get the habit of saying 0, 0, 0. And then that next point, at a distance, I'll make this longer than I need it to be, 20 at a distance at an angle of 0. And even if you can't see it, be okay with that. Try it again. Line from the first point 0, 0, 0. And this time you might want to do the at, 0 in the x, and 20 in the y, and 0 in the z. So you're reestablishing in your brain right away that you can use polar coordinates by using less thans in terms of signaling an angle, or commas to signal a Cartesian. And you notice there This is the step of drafting a box bigger than the thing you're going to draft. I'm going to hit an Apple Software Update and close that now. So now, remember, escape, 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 Z space, E space, and in all reality, my students tell me you don't even need to do the spaces in between, and roll out a little with your mouse. You're then trying to establish that you remember that lines have a given direction, and you do O for offset, T for through, and go click, select, and then shift right click, go to the endpoint. That's probably what you're going to do a lot. On this second one, you might do it by distance again, though I will point out once something is on the drafting space, you're better off using throughs, you will see, in terms of a habit. So I'm going to now say offset. Now I'm going to give it a distance of 20. Return, select, and then just showing something on the side. So I'm going to click up here. Anywhere on that side, it will click it to the right spot. I'll continue to start talking about this one, but immediately saying this, minus V for view, W for window, and probably a good idea to type something like home as opposed to using plot view like I've done in the past. So home, it's asking me my first corner, shift right click from the endpoint of one, shift right click to the endpoint in the other. And this will give you an ability to always go home when you want to go to that point. Escape, 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 Z space, E space, and now you're ready to start drafting. You notice that everything there was put on a layer view, and so we actually have some strong baselines we can now offset to do our work. And I'm going to do now problem 1-2 by offset in real time. I will then do it by actually starting to show you how you could do it faster, but I want to get you to the point where you know that doing things by offset is probably the place to start. Less efficient at the short term, but much more useful when you get into reality in terms of things being parallel, and that being an important aspect of this. So I'm going to do this now, O for offset. I'm going to offset 2, distance of 2, and I'm going to offset this one here. What I'm doing is I'm grabbing the line and then clicking on one side or the other. F for fillet. If you want to learn to hold shift right away, it's a good habit. I'm holding the shift key where I click on these two. And one of the ways to go about doing a lot of this drafting is to draft the whole bounding box. So I'm going to do that by saying O for offset, 8 for a distance across, holding the clicking here with a left click on one side, and then O with the bounding box being 4.5. Click on the line, and then F for fillet. Click, click, space bar, left click, space bar, left click, left click. At this point, many of you are going to want to continue drafting in the view, but remember that we can grab everything, so select everything, and keep our mouse out here in the black space or on the white space and right click, and then change the properties to change the layer to something what we're going to call object, which is going to be something that we're going to draft a lot of things on. When it does that, you'll see I have a problem in that that layer gets lost. Hopefully that's not set in yours. So realize very often one of the things we're going to immediately have to learn to do is to go to Layer Properties Manager here and make sure that we don't have anything turned off. So I'm going to turn all those on, and we're going to look for a key that'll do this a little bit easier for you. So you want to like to be drafting on the right layer. If you're not, and then you see, oh my gosh, something new came, that is a box that's been clicking around. That was essentially a template. You can learn to say, boy, I don't want something like that, or I can stick in another layer. So learn to grab on things and then hit the delete key or hit right click, erase. That should do it, and you're back to really now dealing with the piece that you have, which can now be drafted by offset. So the rest of this will go fast. I'm going to go around clockwise with the offsets and the fillets. I could do all of them at once, but very often it's not a bad idea to do one at a time. O for offset. I'm going to offset that first one by subtraction 0.75. So offset that one there, and then offset it 0.75. Now remember talking about fillet. F spacebar. Spacebar remembers the fillet, and I am keeping the things I want to keep. On the other side, I can offset back. Offset O 1.5. Click on that and bring it back. Now remember this one as well, right? You can offset back through, and we'll talk eventually about breaks, but offset. T for through. Click on that. Shift right click and point there, and now you have something you can do what? Fillet, select, spacebar, select. You now have the back bottom piece done. You can now come back across the top. That first one, working from left to right or right to left, I said I would go in a clockwise direction. That's a reasonable thing. I'm going to offset. It would appear by subtraction, 0.75, offset, 0.75. Click on the select and then click anywhere on the side that you want it to go. It's showing you, you're giving it a hint. And then offset 0.5 coming back down. Remembering once again, F for fillet, select what you want to keep. Select what you want to keep, and you can keep going from there. It's a great idea to learn to offset all the way from the baseline if you can. That next one would be, in fact, what would be have been 0.75 plus 0.75, so it would be 1.5. Offset 1.5. Select here, going across, and then offset down if you would. From that line there, you're going to offset down, it looks like 0.5. Offset 0.5. Once again, F for fillet. Select, spacebar, select. You're making your way down. You can once again, not necessarily offset from the very edge there. Now you could just perhaps offset 1. O for offset, 1 for distance. Offset this short little line. That next one down is a little bit tough to see. You have to look at the subtraction and the like. But you would like to go down, it looks like, mathematically, you'd like to go down the full depth, which is 4.5 minus 1.75. And so you hang around with a calculator, 1.75, 2.75, 3.75. You want to go down 2.75 more, offset 2.75. At this point, I'm going to stop. I did it obviously wrong. You're using visual checks. O, U for undo. Very often you might want to reestablish a line, or you might want to establish a line back up this way. So we can offset that line from the bottom. Offset 1.75. Establish this one. This starts to let you know that you can say F for fillet, and it will grab and lengthen lines as well as shorten them. So you can then do F for fillet, select. Escape if things don't work. F for fillet, select, which is that left mouse button. You now go across 2, offset 2. From there to there. You now are going to go up 0.75, offset 0.75. Select up on top, F for fillet, select what you want to keep. You're going to offset 1.5, offset 1.5. F for fillet, select, spacebar, select. You're almost there. Now you're going to offset 0.75 this way, offset 0.75 this way. And now you're back to knowing that you want to come down 0.5. In all reality, you could draw another line from there, offset this one up. You're going to see there's all kinds of different ways, so I'm going to go ahead and offset this one up 4. Offset 4. O spacebar, 4 for distance, from there to there. You came down, up, fillet, radius 0. And you're finally left with this last little tweak here. This one, O for offset, T for through. From there to the end point there. Fillet. Holding the shift key or not, because the radius has always been set to 0. Space bar for fillet. And you have the piece done. Now, that is harder, longer, different than the way I'll show in the next video, which you'll see will be much quicker. But what you've done there, you've established something that's going to be parallel. One thing it's nice to do, we'll do it early in class, is to right away learn to go right click, bring up dimensions, right? And just to put one dimension on is all we want to really learn to start to do, and it won't always work, but in dimensions we're going to learn to not grab the first one, which is linear, but the aligned, and then shift right click to grab the endpoint of one, and shift right click to grab the endpoint of another, and pull that down. And then to do one other dimension going up, click shift right click the endpoint of here, shift right click the endpoint of there, and you'll notice there why it gets screwed up, because these don't always grab what you want to grab. So you want to be aware of something called visual clues. So the little nuances, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. So I can then go ahead and right click, erase something, and try it again. This time I don't necessarily have to grab, because it's one long line, the endpoints. I can hit a space bar, select the object, and pull that out. Wheeling out, it's then finally a good idea to get the habit of that you can select, left select, go right click properties, change the properties to the layer. We're dealing with these colors by something called layer, putting it on the correct layer, and you're a long ways down the road to doing that. I know this is quote unquote harder than the way that I'll show you, but establishing the offset as a rule for both perpendicular and parallel lines will help you later when a lot of your offsets are things like soffits or windows or things that are not just up and down. Remember then to file. Once you did the file save as, you do a save. And for those now, that's largely done. Later on we'll talk about how you can plot, but let's then review one of the skills you know, which is that you can grab things, and then with the select, and then left click over some logical spinny or scale or something point and space bar through. Move, you might want to move that to a particular spot. You might want to move it, you might want to rotate it, you might want to scale it, not too often. You'll realize once you start drafting exactly, the scaling is not something you're going to do a lot. We did it the first time. You're more likely to have to scale things when you put them in inches and you wanted to put them in feet. So go all the way around from mirror, stretch. I'm just going to go to the point of rotate, and I'm just going to give it a rotation angle right now of 1 hour's time, which is 15 degrees, and you see how it rotates and everything works. So try that and see how you do. Remember the skills that we have. We're trying to push offset. We're trying to draw a box bigger than the thing that we have, and we're trying to use fillet, radius 0 a lot. If you can do the habit of holding the shift key while you select and fillet, it will help to develop a habit through. Shift right click for end snaps. Thanks for listening.